Hi, welcome to reading with me through my book, Parenting with Purpose and African Wisdom. So today we look at parental-child attachment and limit setting. That is a critical thing. How attached is a child and how successful will the limit setting be when there is or there is no attachment. Today's African proverb is a Nyanja proverb, and it says, "A child brought up where there is always dancing cannot fail to dance." And then the biblical proverb is from Proverbs 31, 27 to 28. "She watches after the affairs of her household, her children arise and call her blessed." What's the meaning of these proverbs? The African proverb, "A child brought up where there is always dancing cannot fail to dance," comes from the Nyanja, also known as Chewa people of Malawi. It describes a power of attachment in child development. Now, attachment refers to the bond of love, affection, and emotional connection that a maturing child develops with the primary caregiver, the parent or the guardian. This bond enhances learning. It is like glue that attaches the lessons a parent teaches to the heart of the child. The child learns not only by direct imparting of knowledge, but by watching the parent model behavior. It is like an absorption of good things that causes the child to blossom, wanting to model the way the parent does things. That's powerful, a powerful description of attachment. And then the biblical proverb, "She watches after the affairs of her household, her children arise and call her blessed," describing such a parent who takes good care of the needs of her family, and of course the father who watches lovingly over his home by supplying their holistic needs. The children live to bless such parents through working hard, living responsibly, and doing all they can to make their parents proud. Such an impact cannot happen by remote control when children are removed from their parents during their formative years. In this final part of the chapter, we shall examine the ever-growing tendency, especially in Africa, to send children away to boarding school at a very early stage of development. Until the young ones get to teenage years, they are not ready to leave home yet, parents. Even in adolescence, the teen still needs parental guidance. However, the closer young people get to adulthood, the more parents need to learn how to release them so that in time they can become their own persons. So release does not happen suddenly. It is slowly release them to become their own persons. Now, boarding schools for young children denies them the constant parental guidance that no amount of academic education can replace. Every parent will remember that we are living at a time and age where so many things are battling to shape the life of the child. We need to emphasize that there are special cases where young children end up in boarding school because there is no alternative. This is a case, for example, where a family relocates, very often because of the parent's career. Armed forces are such an example. Certain government jobs and even missionary or church work might require parents to be transferred often, and the family have to relocate each time. Now, parents may choose to have the child in boarding school if homeschooling is not an option. Whatever the family situation is, boarding school before teenage years does not always yield good results because it limits the parent-child proximity for life skills training and attachment building. Life foundations for holistic living are laid between birth and ages 12 and 13. If a parent does not train children in values, in attitudes, work ethics, faithfulness, purity, selflessness, sharing, respect, morality, etiquette, tidiness, cleanliness, self-care, and so on and so forth, someone else will. If a parent does not train the child, someone else will. There is no lack of alternative teachers. We have the media, we have music and music stars, we have the internet, we have books, we have magazines, we have wrong peer relationships, and we have even warped adults and wrong role models. This is not to say that these teachers are not in the home environment as well, or that we can insulate our children from society. We cannot ban the internet or the television or the computers and iPads from our children, nor can we keep them from socializing with their friends. However, when we are physically and emotionally close to our children, impressing the right values with boldness can happen more consistently. This is because guidance can be closely administered in small and consistent doses. Doctors advise patients on medication and prescriptions take 1 tablet 3 times a day as prescribed. With education curricula fast changing to allow all sorts of things at school, parents will want to track closely what their children are learning. For example, caring, listening parents may already be hearing a voice that is arguing that children and youth have the right to choose their sexual orientation, as well as partners with whom to practice their choices. This encouragement by rights activists adds that children should be empowered to negotiate whether or not to have sex with a partner. Does negotiation work with bullies and with rapists? Does it work with individuals or groups of them? One hears horror stories of children forced into sex, even between similar genders, by other children who are expressing their right to choose their sexual orientation. This reality suggests that parents need to examine and ensure that large amounts of money, many of them pay for their children's education away from home, is a wise investment. With reduced adult supervision in both boarding and day schools, we have increasing reports of school bullying. I have read cases of suicidal adolescents who suffered bullying from early years in school and others who experienced the same even in university. One young woman was not only bullied but also sexually molested by a group of boys while in an exclusive private school. Through the years, she lived with self-reproach, low self-worth, and self-loathing, believing that there was something in her that made her peers bully and mistreat her. She wished to die. She went ahead and tried many ways of taking her own life, but somehow she did not succeed. In therapy, she said, "I hate myself that I'm a failure, even at taking my own life." Sadly, the young lady's parents were too engrossed in their careers to notice the struggle going on in their child's life. Thankfully, between professional help and a lot of support and understanding, finally from parents, the young youth was soon on her way to healing, health, and wholeness. This argument is not an attempt to condemn boarding schools or private schools. Our appeal to parents is to take responsibility to parent their children with physical, emotional, and spiritual commitment until the time when the young one has matured well enough to leave home. In cases where the parent has to send a child away to school because of a situation that cannot be avoided, then the obligation to create as much presence with the child as possible still applies. Delegated parenting often fails. Where it succeeds, the child is likely to attach more to the surrogate parent than to the biological one. How many young mothers bemoan the fact that their child feels closer to a nanny or a house girl than the one who gave birth to them? Attachment includes emotional and cognitive connection that the child so much needs for stable development. This kind of closeness helps establish the young one's identity. Asking the question or answering the question, who am I? What is my purpose in the world? Where am I headed? Identity ensures stability that crystallizes the child's perception of the world as a safe place. A recognized and negative psychological impact on children is the challenge of adjustment when there is too much disturbance and change to the child's environment. A stable environment makes for stable identity. To understand this need for stability better, let us take an example of a plant. We grow seeds in the seedbed. When they're mature enough, we prepare the recipient ground with lots of manure and adequate water. Then we transplant the young shoot. We leave the sapling in the new location so that roots can develop. We regularly water that plant and watch out for weeds and pests. We are happy when the new leaves and branches form, and joy comes when the flowers and buds develop. We do not keep transplanting the young plant from one spot to another. Such a plant disturbed over and over again withers and dries away because its roots were disturbed too many times before they took root. The same applies to a child. 1 year at home with mother, then a year at grandma's, 2 years in boarding school, another year with an auntie, then back to mom, then boarding school in between. Because of innate fear of detachment, which happens all the time, such a child stops trying to get emotionally attached to anyone. Roots are not allowed to grow long enough to emotionally attach to significant others. This young one is likely to remain aloof and seemingly emotionally cold and withdrawn. The youth also suffers the inner emptiness of a sense of belonging. Energy is spent trying to adjust to new environments each time change happens. This uncertainty erodes identity, leaving a vacuum that can easily become a doorway to destructive tendencies in later life. In some cases, such children suffer from fear of abandonment and are likely to struggle with various mental health and behavioral issues in adulthood, where detachment may have included neglect and/or abuse in their personal lives. Parental-child attachment is therefore critical in healthy maturation and should never be compromised. So limit setting happens where there is consistency in attachment. May we be more attached to our children. Keep reading. Get a copy of your book from Keswick Bookshop, from Oasis Africa, or from Amazon Kindle.